I've said that the black community is under attack and we can get no justice. This particular clip has to do with Akai Gurley. This gentleman was murdered in a housing project by a New York City police officer. The officer was obviously indicted and found guilty, and he got a sentence of 5 years probation for manslaughter. And given all of the details of the trial, this man should be in jail right now. But the bullshit black district attorney in Brooklyn recommended probation. The judge, who was Asian, took the recommendation of the DA and gave this man 5 years probation. I want to play this clip from News One Now that'll give you some of the details. But my point is this: that police officer fired his weapon in the dark without having a specific target. Any ordinary citizen, who has gun training, one of the first things that they are taught is to always know and sight your target. This guy firing his weapon without knowing what he was shooting at obviously was criminal, and he was obviously convicted of manslaughter. He deserved jail time, at least some jail time, but he gets to go home to his family while Mr. Gurley has been placed in the ground and his family cannot interact with him any longer. Here's the clip.
Go through all the elements whether or not incarceration is necessary through probation and supervision. All right, thank you.
Folks, what you heard was the judge in Brooklyn, New York yesterday telling Peter Leon, the New York police officer who shot and killed Akai Gurley, that he will not have to go to prison as a result. He was convicted of manslaughter in the case of Akai Gurley by a jury. And now, first of all, in Brooklyn, District Attorney Ken Thompson, African American, they recommended that there be no jail time because he wasn't a threat and it was an accident. Of course, you might remember Leon killed Akai Gurley as he was walking down a stairway in a Brooklyn housing project. He fired a bullet into the dark after being startled. The bullet ricocheted and killed Gurley. Witnesses testified that Leon and his partner argued about calling for help and complaining about losing their jobs while watching Gurley's girlfriend perform CPR. I want to go to our panel right now. Of course, Angela Rye joins us. We also have Paris Denard, who's here as well. And oh my goodness, I gotta start with you because this is Michael Vick can go to prison for killing dogs, and for the DA, I don't care if he's black, to say, well, the guy's not a threat, it was an accident. The NYPD testified against this guy, said that first of all, he tried to claim the gun accidentally misfired, and they said there's no way it misfired. How does this cop not go to prison for killing a resident of New York?
Okay, let's break this down. Number one, the cop lied. Okay, he lied about the gun misfiring. Number two, he had no regard for that citizen. He gets on the phone and calls his police rep because he knows that he did something wrong and he's in trouble and he's looking for a way to get out of the trouble that he's in. Okay, number three, the black DA, who they need to vote his ass out of office, had no liability here to recommend jail time. Why? Because the Police Benevolent Association, the PBA in New York, they testified against the police officer. So there's no liability or potential backlash for the DA to recommend at least some jail time. Number four, the judge, Asian judge, there's no ramifications for him not to take the DA's recommendation and to give this guy jail time. So in my opinion, the system basically said, fuck you guys, we don't care if this guy's guilty of manslaughter. A police officer in New York is not going to jail, plain and simple. So what, where does that leave us regular citizens? Because if an ordinary citizen had done the same thing, guaranteed, told you so, accident or not, his ass would be in jail. So I don't want to hear anything at all about the criminal justice system because, number one, it's tilted against minorities, and number two, police officers do not face the same justice, the same punishment as an ordinary citizen, and they are the ones who should be held to a higher standard. This man fired his weapon in the dark. That alone should have gotten him some time. But the fact that he killed a person and then didn't want to render aid, is looking to cover his ass, and lied, automatically he should have got jail time just for lying. Just for lying.
Two reasons, probably. One, manslaughter charges versus murder charges. And second is the judge's ability to be able to issue the sentence like he did. That's called judicial discretion. Whether it's right or it's wrong, it happens. And the judge decided, based upon the facts that were argued in the case, that he had the right not to issue the prison sentence. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that's what the system is right now.
And the problem for many people, if you flip this story, and if a resident Paris had a gun and they got startled in that same stairway and a bullet ricocheted and it killed Leon, there is no way in hell that resident is going home for 5 years.
Well, Roland, it's not just that resident. If it was me, if it was me in a hoodie, if it was me in a suit, if my gun goes off mistakenly or not, and it shoots, it fires and it hits someone, and then on top of that, I do nothing to aid that person and call and try to figure out how I'm going to cover my own behind to make sure I'm safe, that's gross negligence on my part. And I am positive that if it was me, I'd be sitting in prison right now and not being able to just have probation.
Angela, this is what bothers people. And first of all, it's rare that a cop, first of all, gets indicted by a grand jury. Then all of a sudden they go to trial. Then it's even rare for a cop to be found guilty of the crime. And now you still are saying, Jesus, you get indicted, you're found guilty, and you still don't go to jail.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. One is, and I think it's the last fact that Paris just referenced, and that is he did not behave as though his gun going off was an accident. He behaved as someone who knew that he did something wrong and he didn't want to suffer the consequences.
Was calling his union rep.
I understand that, instead of calling for help for Akai Gurley. And for me, this morning, just to be very candid with you all, I had to reread what happened. And I didn't have to reread what happened because I didn't remember Akai Gurley's name. I did. I had to reread what happened because it happens too much, Roland. We continue to go through this line of questioning and trying to decide if there was something wrong that the victim did. And they continue to be on trial, and we have to continue to demonstrate that they're upstanding citizens who didn't deserve to die. And that statement, that burden of proof is not on us. The burden of proof should always be on the criminal or the person who's charged with a criminal act. And I'm sorry, Freudian slip, I think that it is criminal. Whether he thought it was an accidental gunfiring or not, he certainly did not behave like he wanted to save this man's life. And as law enforcement, as someone who is supposed to be in charge of protecting and serving, he should have at least done that for Akai Gurley.
Now, my thought is this. Instead of that being Akai Gurley, a black man of no means, put a white man or a white woman of means, okay, visiting somebody. Let's say it was an attorney, okay, visiting a client. Excuse me. And the elevators are out. and that same attorney decides that they're going to walk down the stairs, and this guy turns around and kills them. Do you believe that that police officer would not be in jail at this time? Because the person with means, his people would have fricasseed the DA for recommending probation, and they would have destroyed the judge for allowing this guy to walk with 5 years probation. So in my opinion, that DA needs to be voted out during the next election, because in New York you elect your district attorneys and you also elect the judges. And since you also elect the judges, if this guy doesn't have some kind of tenure, he needs to be voted out as well.
To say that this guy can't even go to jail for 1 year, but to say, okay, fine, 5 years supervised probation. That's it.
There are stiffer sentences for black men in this country who commit far less offenses.
Wait a minute. The young man who was in Rikers, who was accused of stealing a backpack, sat in prison for, what was it, 2 years? Before they never even went to trial. He sat in Rikers Island for 2 years and was accused of stealing a backpack.
And you wonder why, well, you don't wonder, right? This is clearly why criminal justice reform is a bipartisan issue, because there's instances like this that keep happening, and people are just on both sides of the aisle, young and old, saying, this doesn't feel like justice. Something is wrong with our justice system when you see things like this continue to happen in 2016. This is why criminal justice reform needs to stay on the forefront of the political debate on both sides of the political parties.
And Ronald, folks wonder why you have Black Lives Matter. They wonder why folks are protesting. They wonder why people are angry. They wonder why folks don't trust a political system. Exhibit A.
Right. Absolutely. And again, I've said this before on your show, Roland, but this is the power of social media, of cameras, of a 24/7, if not a 24/24 news cycle, which is highlighting these issues are so important to back up that political movement and show what is really going on out there.
We were going to talk about this, Tom.
All right, so again, this is just another example of two different criminal justice systems, one for all of us, and one for the police officers. And if you don't call this preferential treatment, you don't have a heart or a mind, because there is no way that that police officer should be able to go home under supervised probation based on his actions.